So, onwards and upwards to genetic drift as a driving force of evolution. Genetic drift is an interesting one. Right? Genetic drift is basically anything random that will change the allele frequency of a population. Right? And now, in its base form, that randomness occurs as randomness. Right? And so, when you are mating and you are passing your genes on to your children, there is an aspect of probability involved in which genes get passed on, right? And so, in the simplest sense, it's kind of like flipping a coin. Right? You have two copies of each gene, right? And whichever one you happen to pass on to your kids is 50-50. It's like heads or tails. Right? And that's the same for anything, for the entire population as a whole. If it's a typical Mendelian trait, there's only two variations of that allele. It could be 50-50, right, if there's an even chance. Now, pretend that natural selection has favored a red allele over a blue allele, right? It might be 75% chance there's red and 25% chance there's blue because there's 75% of the alleles in the population might be red, right? Either way, right? If there's two options, 50-50, right, on an individual level. Yeah. And so if I were to ask you to flip a coin 100 times, right, you may very well flip 100 heads. It's not likely, it's not probable, but it's possible. 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 Right? And so sometimes genetic drift shows up like this. It's literally just through the course of random mating, one of the alleles gets reduced or increased by happenstance. Right? In severe cases, it can just be entirely eliminated. Right? If you have a small enough population and they all flip heads, right? In that next generation, there's no tails anymore. They're all gone. And so that allele is eliminated. It's out of here. It can never come back unless some gene flow brings it back. Right? But literally, a random chance can just get rid of an allele or change the allele frequency significantly. Right? Random happens. Okay. Another form of genetic drift occurs through random events, such as natural disasters. Right? And now, if you imagine you got some tiny micro hippopotamuses, right? Super tiny hippopotamuses that live on the end of bananas. Right? You have red hippopotamuses and you have blue hippopotamuses. One day, on the end of that banana, there happened to be a party that all the red hippopotamuses were at, right? And all the blue hippopotamuses were down the other end of the banana. Not because they were blue and red, it's just that's how it happened to be that day, right? And then a meteorite comes and smashes off the tip of that banana, right? All the red micro hippopotamuses are now dead. It wasn't because they were red. It wasn't natural selection. Just random, right? But now that population is full of blue alleles. Okay? That was genetic drift. That happens too. Yeah. In a more reasonable and realistic explanation of how natural disasters can impact a population's allele frequency, we have what's called the bottleneck effect. Right? And so when some awful thing happens and it murders a bunch of the population, right? So let's go back to the meteorite. Smashes down, crashes the earth. Right? A lot of humans die. Let's say 93% of the humans die. Right? And let's say that it crashed in North America. Right? And so all the United States people, they're all dead. All the Canadians are all dead. All the Mexican people are all dead. Right? A lot of the South American people are all dead. Okay? The dust goes up in the sky and it kills the European people. So everybody that's living in Europe is dead. All the people living in Russia, I think that's part of Europe, they're dead. Right? It goes over, it causes earthquakes, and China blows up, and Japan falls under the ocean, and Korea is surrounded by tornadoes because of the pressures of the meteorite. Right? And so all the Asian nations are dead. I didn't list all the Asian nations, obviously, but all the Asian nations, they're dead too. right? And then a great deal of Africa gets blown up too, right? And so there's just one little tiny community of humans left on the southern tip of Africa, okay? And that particular community happened to be a colony of Mormons who were there to spread the word of Mormonism, okay? And so now the only humans left are these Mormon humans. Okay. Now let's pretend for a minute that Mormonism is genetic, because why not? Right? They have the alleles for being Mormons. And now the entire population of the human race is now Mormons, right? Because everybody else died. That's the bottleneck effect, right? Okay. And then there's also the founders effect. Right? So if you take a main population and you select a few individuals from that main population and you send them off to make a colony somewhere else, right, and they land, right, and they start up a colony, the distribution of alleles within that mini group, right, can be very different than the distribution of alleles from the main group. Right? So this new colony's allele frequency is going to reflect the individuals that came to start the colony, right, rather than the allele frequency of the original population. And so that's called the founders effect. Yeah, genetic drift. Random stuff happens, changes allele frequencies. That was a long, quick vid. You're welcome. Bye.